Good evening. My name is Florian and I run the website lifesciencementor.com. And today I'm talking about day 40 of the 180-day Idea Machine Challenge. Today's topic is regrets. How to let go of them. So this is a really difficult topic to talk about because when I talk about the regrets I had in my life, first of all, I don't have too many regrets because I always try to live my life the way that I really wanted to do, and had less care for things like status or fulfilling a specific career, or these things that kind of lead us down the path where we try doing things that is not really us, right? So I always try to avoid that, and thanks to my parents, that's the education I got. And maybe it's just also that I grew up a very lucky person. So I was never really forced into a situation where I had to choose something that I didn't really want to do. So maybe I'm a bit spoiled here. I try to leverage that to transform that into always living my life the way I really want. Then still, there's not only so many things you can tell yourself. Maybe I'm completely bullshitting myself here. That's why I decided to come up with 10 regrets that I still do have, no matter how small they may be. And then figure out ways how I can let go of those regrets. And I hope that can be inspiring for all of you, because to a certain extent, I think all of us carry some regrets with them. And you don't want to, like, on your deathbed, you never want to meet the person that you could have become and be severely disappointed, right? That's not what you want. So I always try to live my life in a way that, if I die tomorrow, I still have lived the day of my life, the last day of my life that I always wanted to live it. So I accept every day. But that is something that I cultivated over a longer time. And so when you think about regrets, and I talked about Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, on my blog. So basically, there are 5 regrets people are talking about when they are close to dying. And Bronnie Ware, who wrote this book, actually was a registered palliative nurse. So she was involved into caring for people on their last weeks of their life, basically. Those were all people that had to die, that knew there was a diagnosis, they would die. And so then they had like 14 days to reflect on their whole life, right? And many of them realized that they had deep regrets. She tried to alleviate them a little bit, but still there were 5 that stuck out. The first one is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. That was number 1. Not living your life the way you wanted, but the way others wanted of you. That is number 1 regret. And number 2 was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And I think that refers to people that work for somebody else, right? So people that climbed the corporate career ladder and then realized they worked far too hard, and that wasn't really what they wanted, right? Which feeds back into regret number 1. Because if you really have fun working on what you're really passionate about, then it isn't really work, right? It's really fun. And if you make sure that you still care about your family and your friends, then you should be fine. Which brings us to regret number 3, which is I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. That is important. Stay in touch with your friends. So if you do things that you really want, and work is not work, but ultimately your passion, or you find something outside of work that you can pursue. So some people are very happy about their work. That's their passion. They do the whole day, nothing else but their work. And other people just work 9 to 5 and then have their hobby that they really love working on. Both cases is fine. They won't have a regret that they worked so hard. And when they had stayed in touch with their friends, they have little to regret on that front as well. So first regret, once again, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Number 4, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. And number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. Those are 5 most common regrets. And if you take care of regret number 1, live your life the way you really want to live it, then you take more or less automatically care of the other regrets as well. So, that being said, even though I think I live my life pretty much as I want to live it, maybe that's an illusion, right? So I went through this exercise, thought about 10 things I regret, and then think about ways to let go of that regret. Just let it go and be proactive about avoiding the situation that led to that regret before, right? I think that's a sustainable goal. You see something you regret. Second, you think about if there was something that was good about it that still went well and something that went really bad. And then you come up with ways to change the things that are bad. Once again, this is how I let go of regrets, or this is how I avoid regretting something. First of all, identify and be really brutally honest with yourself. Identify what the regret is, what you really regret. Number 2, figure out if there was something good about it, still, something that worked out, even though you regret the whole situation. And then figure out what didn't work, what made the situation so regretful. And then you look at that one thing and you come up with ways to change it in the future so you won't have that regret again. That's the plan. And let's see how that applies to the regrets I have had in my life. So, my number 1 regret, if you want to call it that way, is that I did not first work in finance and be financially independent now. And that is something I only realized a couple years ago. So, I was always very excited for being a scientist. So I knew I wanted to be a scientist with age 17. And so I signed up I really worked hard in school to make the cut to get accepted to a biochemistry studying program in Germany. So there was limited capacity for people to study biochemistry, and there was a lot of demand for doing that. So the universities were actually selecting, and you had to get A grades or wait several years, get on a waiting list and then get in. But I didn't want to wait several years to start studying. So I did. I worked hard in school. I made the cut. I got accepted into biochemistry. And then I studied 5 years. Then discovered my true passion within that science, my subcategory, developmental biology. Did my PhD in Germany in the lab of Carl Philipp Heisenberg in Dresden. And then went to do my first postdoc, the lab of Dr. Eric Wieschaus in Princeton. And then I changed 3 years later because of the girlfriend I had at the point, and also because I felt I was at a dead end. So I changed to do a postdoc in New York University in the lab of Dr. Jesus Torres Vasquez. And I just finished that postdoc with a paper we published, and that's all well. But I'm thinking now if that was the right career choice. Because if you make your passion your profession, that's tricky. You think that's great. You're forever working your passion. There is one caveat. If you now must use your passion to earn money with it, you put constraint on that passion. Now you have to deliver results from your passion. A passion is a passion because you can just explore in many different areas and do what you really like to do in that passion, like let your mind a little bit wander, right? And even if you want to make a business out of that passion, then you can still set your goals and work towards them. It's self-determined. If you sign up to work your passion as your profession and then be an employee about that, that means somebody else tells you what you have to do within your passion. So mostly that's okay, because hey, you get to work in science, and that was my passion. So science was everywhere. I didn't care if I should really have to do this experiment or that experiment. However, over time, it becomes a little bit of a nuisance, because you can't start exploring all the different ways that you want. No, you have to keep to that topic, and you're basically an employee, and that kind of contaminates your passion. So the way to go, I think now, would have been for me to take a job in finance or in sales, put the same energy in that I had put into science, and try to retire with like 30, 35, 40, then start following science. And that is what I would actually tell my 20-year-old self. And I also know that my 20-year-old self would not listen, right? So there were people that told me try something more practical, but I didn't want to hear anything about the practicality. I wanted to pursue my passion. And whether that is what you want to do, if you're 20 years now and are thinking about that, or whether you look back and agree or not agree with me, think about how great it would be if you can really pursue your passion and you don't have to worry about having to earn money with it. So, and you would be in prominent companionship. What's his name? Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was a printer. So he ran a printing business until he was 40 years old, at which time he retired. And then he did his famous experiments with the lightning rod, right? And a thunderstorm lightning, you know. We invented the electric lightning rod, and that he did when he didn't have to earn money from his science. And back in the 18th century, there was no organized science where you could really like be an employee for science. If you wanted to do science, that had to be something you financed completely yourself. Or you got some grants from some kings that wanted to see you perform science, but then you would have been an employee as well. That was rare, right? So now, all I can do now is try to become financially independent in the next years. And though that's certainly feasible, I wish I had done it a little bit earlier. So why can I let go of that regret anyway? Because, as I said, at the point, if we think about if we regret having taken a certain career path, always think back, what was the situation then when you started? So if I think back on my start, as I said, I wouldn't have listened to me doing something practical. No. I wanted to really follow my dream and follow my passion. However, the only way to get a clearer head about that would have been I would have sat down and calculated my finances and realized how much more I would have to earn to fulfill a vision, a dream, right? I would have set a vision. Where do I want to be in 30 years, right? And then what do I want to have? If I want to live in a little house on the countryside, I would calculate and drive a certain type of car. I would have calculated how much that car and that house would cost me, and then I would have made an analysis. What's the best compromise of getting paid and still following something that is fun for me, right? Or you just decide to work a job that is just a job for you and then pursue your passion a little bit on the side. That's both possible. But I recommend making this financial listing when you start out and see whether that's really sustainable, whether you can really think with what you study, for example, you can have a job later on, or whether what you study is not the right thing to study, right? Aaron Clarey talks in abundant ways about that, and lots of other people do as well, that if you go to college and your dream is to become a theater arts major, you better be really, 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 really good to make it to the top, and then not bother being willing to play in small circuses or whatever, right? So if you want to go that risk, then go for it. But if not, think about a financial situation and think about first putting your financial security on solid footing, follow your passion full time. You can follow your passion a little bit on the side already, and then later on pursue it full time, right? But don't underestimate the power of finances. So there was a long part I talked about that, and I hope that wasn't too resigned or something like that, or fatalistic. I just want to say, looking back, be aware when you start out studying that it's extremely important to be financially independent, and not having to work a job later on, which means that have to be there, go on a commute, and and then work on something that is not really something you really want to do, right? Even if you get a job like some employer where you can really do what you want, that employer get out of business, you have to look for another position, yeah, and then all of a sudden you have to work something you really don't want, and you still have to because you have to make a living, right? So that you want to avoid. That's something I would regret, but there's no point for me to regret it, because now I would not have been in the US if I had taken a financial job. I would have not been in the US. I would have probably told myself of like, had I just started out as a scientist when I was 20 years old, had I just done that, I kind of abandoned my dream, right? So that's why I say, make sure that your finances are there, but also don't give up on your passion. Pursue that on the side. Don't give up completely, right? So find a good balance, and that's the way to go, I think. Okay, so that was regret number one, and I have to say one thing: never look back in anger at your regret. Never look back in sadness. Never look back in some kind of disappointment, because you can't change the past, right? It just happened, and so you got to do the best, make the best of it, and look what you can learn from it from the future. Regret number two is not having a family yet. Eventually I want to have a family, but so I had the opportunity. I was dating a girl and we were almost married. We were at the point where we were writing the invitations or thinking about who we invite to the wedding ceremony. So as we set the point, and I still had to propose, as we set the point, I realized we were not compatible as persons. And so we broke the whole thing off and we split. So sometimes I think in the back of my mind, it would have been nice to just like make a compromise, just close your eyes and go through with it, make a compromise. I would have like 2 or 3 kids by now. That would be great. But then again, that regret is easy to diffuse, because you cannot bring up kids when the marriage or when your relationship with your significant other is not strong. That will be miserable for you, and the kids realize that after a while, so they basically grow up in a broken home. Or if the parents do decide to stay together and stick it out, it's never really a joyful home, right? So that way I can let go of that regret. And if you want to think about how to avoid these regrets in the future, is don't put on your rose-colored glasses when you choose your spouse. If that is someone you think about marrying or living together for a long time or forever, then make sure that you're compatible on the day-to-day life. And very importantly, as a man, don't think, this is it, I have to accept her, it can't get better than her. Never ever go into a marriage out of scarcity. That's my goal. I'm happily single, and I want to still date until I know that I've dated all the types of women that I want, so that the one that I choose to be my partner, I really choose her, and because I want to, and not because out of scarcity, right? Not because I think, oh, it can't get better than her. And so that is very, very important. Never go through with any marriage where you think, that may not last. I mean, I know Emotionally, you may be there and you may be really happy that now finally you get married and so on. But no, think about if you are going along in your daily life, and if you've talked about everything that makes up your personality, if you had enough time to get to know each other. We had been together for 2 years, 1.5 years, not enough time. We lived together for 1 year of those 1.5 years, but still not enough time. For me, you have to decide how it is for you, but never get married to. I think if you get married to someone when you're not 100% sure that it works out with your personality, that is something you will regret far more than one abandoned marriage for which you had already started making plans for the wedding. So just forget about that. Number 3, I regret that I haven't deepened the connection to one of my mentors as much as I could. So one of the supervisors I worked with, I didn't get along too well with, and we still split amicably, still on friendly, on good terms. So I was even contacting him like a couple months ago, and so that's all still good. But I feel regret that I didn't deepen the connection more. And so why didn't I do that? So I missed the opportunity, and I regret missing the opportunity to deepen the connection because I kind of pouted. I kind of I was a bit emotionally immature of me. So we didn't get along too well. And so I just stood there and said, it's not my fault. I just, screw that, right? And then just in a kind of whiny way, just let it go and let it slip away. So why I can let that go is because, as I said, we're still on good terms, and there's no bigger harm done, right? So that's good. You can't be on great terms with everyone. Good terms are still fine, right? So it didn't work out that well, and that's okay. So how you can avoid that regret in the future is by getting your ducks in a row, basically. Whenever you think that a relationship with a friend, for example, or with a supervisor, with any other person, starts to sour a little bit or starts not to develop, not to grow as much anymore, then you do an assessment. Is it worth salvaging, or would you rather, or do you think even if you had kind of a talk about it, it would further deteriorate? If that's the case, you should just count your blessings and just try to get another job and just leave it, or just gracefully exit the friendship, right? If you think it still would work out, then search the talk, and you can then win on the long run, right? But if you have the impression it doesn't go too well, be proactive and rather end it amicably, right? And then you never regret anything. As I said, not everything works out as well. And I have to say, things like that, I want to be honest with what I regret. I mean, that's why it's so hard. It's not easy for me to admit these things, right? Not everything went well in my life. Many things did, but some didn't go as well as I wished. So that, it's a bit daring to me to say that, but still, I believe in being as honest as possible. So I'm mentioning that. Okay, and then number 4, I regret that I did not change my career path earlier. So I did a postdoc for a long time. I did my PhD. I started studying biochemistry in 1995. Then I did my PhD from 2001 to 2005. Then I did my first postdoc in Princeton from 2005 to 2008. And then the second in New York City from 2008 to 2015. And after the postdoc in Princeton, which was a great experience, and I thought but yet still I thought, I worked on Drosophila melanogaster, did research there, and I thought that kind of research, I felt like I'd be in a dead end, right? So I thought, well, dead end area of study, so just change the field of study. And then I went back to do research on zebrafish, blood vessel development in the brain, in New York City. That was an exciting topic, and I was ecstatic going to the other lab. Well, over time, I have realized that, that doesn't really fulfill me as much anymore. And my mistake was that I should have started to look for an industry job earlier, because what I really regretted was not so much having chosen the wrong topic, having chosen Drosophila instead of, which in plain English is the fruit fly, having chosen fruit fly as a topic, and then it wasn't just a matter of changing the fields of research, it was academic research that didn't really do it for me, because the next step in my career, if I still continue the academic path, would become a group leader. And a group leader is actually someone who's very specialized already. So as a group leader, I would be very specialized on the last topic I worked on. And then maybe like 4 or 5 people in the whole world can understand what I'm doing. And that is not enough. I do want to reach more people. I want to talk to more people. I feel like I've now already reached more of you with this medium here in this movie with my blog than I have done with science. So in industry, I would have had more applied research, more applied to everyday life, to curing diseases for people, developing drugs, and that would have been more fulfilling to me. So I should have recognized that earlier. That the field of study was not the problem, but being in academia versus industry. And I should have made the career switch earlier. But there's no point to regret that, because, as I said, I was ecstatic to change from Drosophila to zebrafish. So I was really happy about that. And, well, then later on, I realized that there was a bigger problem underlying. But, back then, I would have never wanted to do anything else than what I did, right? So, once again, the way to avoid that is 2 different ways, actually. The first way is diversify your income. With that, I mean, you have your main job, and then you have small extra jobs. Like, for example, drive for Uber. There's actually a blog called The Rideshare Guy. This is a physics engineer who actually drives Uber in his free time, right? The biggest problem is, and I think that's another very, very big problem for people in academic research, is actually you are not, you have placed so much energy into a scientific career that sunk cost fallacy rears its ugly head. If you spend like 10 years on academic research or more, you kind of want to get back what you invested in your time, right? So you try to stay in academia. But if that is really something that doesn't get you forward on your way, then you want to switch. And one way to get out of this sunk cost fallacy is to have have a side hustle, have a side income, because then you can more easily let go of your primary source of income, and you don't have to do that exclusively. So you can do for Uber, you can rent out room at home for Airbnb. I have a few weeks ago I wrote an article about passive income ways that you can start right now to earn passive income in 3 months, which is one of those ways that I introduced there. Or become freelance writer and so on and so forth. And the second is think about your ideal day in the future and then develop a vision towards it, and then calculate what that vision means. I've already talked about that for regret number one. Um, and that's regret number four, that I did not change my career path earlier. Regret number five is that I haven't been faster on publishing my latest research paper. So we discovered the major element in the research paper at the beginning of 2012. And looking back, I should have streamlined the research back then and pushed for rapid publication. That would have gotten us into a big journal. But instead, I went and wanted to explore several different ideas that seemed to be exciting at that time. And I thought they would have to have a place in our paper. So it took a very, very long time, or much longer than we would have normally had, with the result that we now had to choose a different journal to publish in that we originally intended. So instead of a great journal, we took a good journal, which is, don't get me wrong, we got it published in a good journal. No doubt about it. I would be competitive on the job market if I chose to go for group leader position. Not a problem, but it could have been a great journal if I just had streamlined it more. And so what my mistake was, what I regret there, is that I had underestimated the competition, right? So all of a sudden competition comes up, becomes bigger and bigger, and then we have to publish it immediately, and then that meant not the original journal we had in mind. And so how can I let go of that regret? So first of all, I learned a lesson that I will not forget so easily. And then second, it was a happy ending after all, right? We published it and it's all fine. But still, I should have done a little bit faster. And to avoid that in the future, you want to have a good compromise between speed and thoroughness. You want to have a certain deadline. You want to say, we want to be thorough on our work, but we also don't want to take too long. So we want to have it done by 15 months from now. We want to send it in the manuscript, and so we want to be as thorough as we can be in that amount of time. Essentially, if you what you really want to figure out is what the core of your work is. What experiments do you need to do to prove your core hypothesis about your topic in science? And then once you have that, then everything else sort of like falls in line around that. And I guess the same is it for starting a business. You want to discover a unique selling proposition, right? And then once you have your central product done, then you can build everything else around that. So that's a way to automatically get a compromise between speed and thoroughness. You want to be as thorough as you can be on your central core of the project, and then everything else will just, how thorough you have to be on anything else will be determined how much your core has to be buttressed by additional data or additional points, right? I think that's the best way to go about it. Regret number 6, that I haven't been courageous enough to push side projects. So over the years, I had several ideas for scientific hypotheses that I did not pursue because my group leaders were not enthusiastic about them, and we were in the middle of other projects. And so I regret that I let so many ideas in my mind go by, because then I found that about 10-20% of the ideas I had were actually put in motion a year later by another group. However, I can let go of that regret, because these ideas that are put in, first of all, the ideas, some of them I did put in place, right? Some of them ended up being good ideas that we use for our paper lately, right? And those ideas I forget about, right? Those ideas I don't have on the radar as ideas that I would also have liked to put in motion, because I simply put them in motion. So it's moot to think about. It's not the case that I never put any idea in motion, right? You just think there's so many other ideas that you still could have done, but you didn't get to it, and then, somebody else did them. However, there's a reason that you didn't pursue those ideas in the first place, and that reason is practicality. So I imagine that the same for business as well. If you want to get a project done, you look for your ideal vision and you look for practicality. So if you have a great idea for a hypothesis, but you don't have the means to put that into place, then it's better to shelve the idea for the long run. if you have, if, and then I guarantee you, the other groups that are actually doing what was your idea, they have the infrastructure to put it actually in motion. Ideas are not so difficult to come by, but the execution is the more difficult step. So no point, regretting it. It is what it is, and as long as you have, as long as you get your central project through it, as long as you get your product sold, all fine. And if you have an idea, try it out as soon as possible. And if you have taken some action on that idea, and then you have a better idea whether it's feasible or not, that's fine. Then you will never have any regrets about that, right? But just put it out, put the idea, try it out once, and then be done with it. Or pursue it if it looks promising. But don't regret too much ideas that you haven't pursued. You haven't pursued them for a reason, and that was a good reason. Number 7 is that I'm thinking about leaving academia, and I feel like I disappoint colleagues that invested time and effort into teaching me things. I talked to one of my former group leaders, and he said, "Don't worry about that because you gave back." And that's true. I wrote or co-authored over the last 14 years 12 papers that are peer-reviewed papers, articles, reviews, book chapters, but it's like almost every year one paper or every one publication with my name on it. I guess that's good enough. I mean, I don't need to. I didn't disappoint, right? They taught me, and I gave back by producing papers for them and with them. So don't. There's no point regretting that. I can let that go. So to avoid those regrets in the future, be sure that you only owe loyalty to yourself, right? You owe loyalty. Well, you got to be loyal with your friends. But if that is more a work relationship, well, then they teach you something, you deliver the work for them, and that's it, right? You have to make sure that you want to go where you want to go, right? And that you're loyal to your own vision and to your own work. And if that vision takes you away from one field of work into a different field of work, don't feel bad by leaving those people behind. You paid your dues. Number 8. I regret not having taken faster action on the green card. And okay, green card. I have a green card now. So I regret that I didn't do it like 3 years earlier. But there's a lot of administration with it, and I was a bit slow on that. So now I have the green card. And to avoid such regrets in the future, just close your eyes and jump through the administrative hurdles. It's less work than you think. Number 9, I regret not always keeping in touch as well as I want to. So I get to know new people and I don't always follow up with them, email or phone call. So that's what I regret sometimes. It takes me a while to follow back up with people and feel bad about that sometimes. Regret that because some friendships were not developing as well as they could have done. Then again, I can let go of that regret because just this year I refreshed relationships with 2 friends from school, and the third one that I also know from earlier times. So refreshing the relationship, on maintaining relationship with 3 people from 10, 15, 20 years back. I don't need to worry about not following up on not keeping in touch. Just, if I really want to avoid that regret in the future is a matter of organization, right? So I would write down when I talked last to a friend, and to an acquaintance, and then I would look at the calendar and say, "Oh, I gotta keep the contact to that person because last contact was half a year ago, and I just gotta check up on them." Right? So that's what you do. It's not a matter of mindset. It's more of a matter of personality. It's more a matter of organization for me. Right? Right. And then we have number 10. I'm writing every morning. It's called 750words.com. And the goal is to write 750 words every morning. And I now write like more than 1,000 words. I write them, and I started last year, but I broke that chain of consecutive writing several times. So now I'm on a consistent consecutive writing streak of 283 days or 285 days, something like that. And I will not break that chain ever again. It's tough in the beginning, and so if you are establishing something new, push yourself through it and after the first 3 months, you will automatically keep it. It becomes something that goes, it takes a lot of time in the beginning, but after a while, your mind finds ways to deal with it, and then things go fast, like that. And with that being said, regrets, that many, or rather, this many. I think it's this many. But then again, this is more fun. On to a regretful future life. Cheers. See you tomorrow. If you enjoyed the video, click like. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'm answering every comment that you make on the YouTube video, on the blog, after I sobered up. See you tomorrow.